Here we are.
Yes, sir.
How close are we to being arrested? I don't know. We just made it one step closer to being arrested.
What do we do
Apparently,
this time?
I don't. Well, we're associating with people who are getting arrested.
Oh.
Now he got arrested in Israel, but you know, their government and our government, as we all know, are pretty closely aligned. Jeremy Loffredo, who was an unregistered guest last year, who also attended the Icarus Festival and is a friend of mine, and he's an independent journalist, best known for his work at the Grayzone. And as I said when he was on my show, I mean, he's just simply like the best, or certainly one of the best investigative reporters in the world. He reported on the vaccine hysteria during COVID, and for that reason, he actually was working for Rebel News, the right-wing outfit in Canada during that time. He's exposed many things that dissident people have been interested in, and especially in foreign policy. He's actually, during the Ukraine war, he actually went to Russia and reported from Russia what the home front in Russia actually looked like, and kind of confounded a lot of what people were saying. And with Israel, he similarly, I think he's taken 3 trips now to Israel during the war since October 7th. And he did amazing reporting from the West Bank and kind of showed a lot of stuff that no one even knew about that was going on the West Bank, involving settlers taking people's homes and stealing land and being supported by IDF soldiers, etc. He also went to the border with Gaza, to the Erez crossing where the humanitarian aid trucks were going in, and reported on the settlers who were blocking those trucks and the IDF soldiers who were helping them do that. And then most recently, I think this was just a few days ago, he filed a report from Tel Aviv where he went and found the sites where the missiles from Iran struck, because of course Israel's been saying that no damage was done, basically hiding what happened. And we know something like about a dozen large missiles hit the ground in Tel Aviv, yet including, most importantly, at a major military base. And Jeremy got as close as he could to the base and showed videos of a crater, a 30-foot wide crater within, sight of that base. And then today or yesterday, when he was arrested, he was on his way to the West Bank, or he was in the West Bank shooting a documentary. I don't know about what, but it was with Palestinians in the West Bank and journalists. He was with 3 other journalists, and they were at a checkpoint in the West Bank, and they all got seized by the IDF. According to them, this is what the journalists, Jeremy, we haven't heard from Jeremy at all. It's been more than 24 hours, but the other journalists he was arrested with eventually got released. And so everything we know is from them. And they say that there was 4 of them. They got detained at a checkpoint by the IDF, that they were beaten, blindfolded, and taken to a military base and detained there. And this was, at this point, I think it's 30 hours ago. It was yesterday that this happened, and took their phones. And so no one's been able to hear from Jeremy at all. I think no one even knows where he is, which base. All we know is what those journalists told us. He was the one, and this is really chilling, he was the only one of the 4 who was kept by the IDF. The other 3 were released, as I said. I don't even know who the other 3 are. Well, one of them, I saw her name. I've never heard of her. She seems to be fairly small in terms of as a media presence. And my guess is that, I'm sure the IDF and the Israeli government are extremely aware of the Grayzone, because the Grayzone has been by far the most important, powerful, and popular media outlet, challenging the Israeli narrative on everything, and especially the war, and always has. And Max Blumenthal, of course, is well known in Israel as probably the leading enemy as an intellectual, public intellectual of Israel. So I'm sure that's why this happened. Jeremy, I think he's 24, 5. He's really, really young. He's a very earnest, sweet kid. I see him as who just does amazing work and he has exactly the right kind of curiosity, and the curiosity that I most admire, and then the courage to actually follow up on it. I mean, for someone from your generation who is, not just not playing video games, but flying to war zones in foreign countries and reporting on the ground with his iPhone usually, and showing things that no other media in the West shows, and exposes many of the lies of our government, is impressive. And so this is why it's, especially hard, because Jeremy's especially good and especially important. And as I said when we started, it does feel, not that I don't think you or I, especially not you, I don't think you or I are going to get arrested anytime soon. But, there have been moments, actually, even with this little show over the last 3 years, in which we felt little of the brunt of state repression. YouTube has shut us down, banned videos, demonetized us many times, mostly for challenging the COVID narrative. Other things as well, though, but that was mostly. But we got punished, and of course, YouTube is following the orders of the security state. Let's not be confused about that. We know exactly what Silicon Valley does and why they're doing it in those regards. They don't care about politics. They're doing what their masters are telling them to. And here's another moment. We have not been repressed in a little while now. It's been about a year since we've been banned or demonetized on YouTube. But, this is one of those moments where the Ukraine war, that was another one. A couple of our videos got hit by YouTube because we said the wrong things about US foreign policy in Ukraine. And here's the latest example of people in my immediate orbit who have been directly hit by a government. Gonzalo Lira, I suppose, was the last one, although he was somewhat of a special case since he was living inside Ukraine, being an extremely vocal dissident while living inside Ukraine when it was at war. You kind of expect that at a certain point to get picked up, which is what he did, which is what happened. I think Jeremy had just been in Israel for like a week or two when he was arrested yesterday. So anyway, this is so there's that. And then the other thing, sort of broaden it out, not just talk about Jeremy and the specific case, but sort of what this means, what it represents, why it's important. Why it's important, I think, well, a few reasons. One is Israel at this point, the last number I saw, I think it's 187 journalists have been killed in Gaza by the IDF, which is record breaking. There has been no war in human history in which journalists have been killed at that rate. Almost 200 in a single year. It doesn't happen. And it's very clear. In fact, this video just came out today of an Al Jazeera journalist with his press vest on and his press helmet on, getting shot in the neck by a sniper. Snipers obviously, they can see their target very well. That's the sort of point of being a sniper. So they're obviously deliberately killing journalists and have been. And now they can get away with it clearly in Gaza when it's a Palestinian journalist, because as we've seen, in general, the Western mind devalues Palestinian and Arab life, just simply doesn't see it as nearly as significant as Western life. What they did now, though, in arresting Jeremy Loffredo is, I think, make one of the biggest mistakes of the entire war. I think Israel just made one of its gravest tactical errors in detaining Jeremy Loffredo. And if it turns out that they did beat him up or torture him or blindfold him, all the more. Do you not think that Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate and all the journalists around them, like me, will not run with this story a little bit? Do they not think that this will do nothing but launch a brand new massive campaign, anti-propaganda campaign against that government and that war in particular? I mean, big mistake, guys. Really big mistake. And I don't have to lift a finger. I just know that this is going to result in an incredible backlash against the Israeli government. So I just, I hope that Jeremy hasn't suffered too much for this, but I think he will end up becoming a catalyst for what will be a big problem for the state of Israel. Fuck them.
So a big thing about Jeremy Loffredo is he's an American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a report now of an American citizen being beaten, blindfolded, and kidnapped and detained,
Exactly.
having his device confiscated by a foreign government. And
no, by our what do they call it? Our staunchest ally.
Mm-hmm.
That's who did it. Now, if it had happened in Russia, of course, we'd all say, well, of course, that's what happens in Russia. If it happened in, Sri Lanka, we'd say, well, okay, that's terrible, but we don't have a relationship with Sri Lanka. No, this was done by our staunchest ally, who Kamala Harris just said, and the State Department spokesperson, Matthew Miller, just said today, we will support no matter what. Because people said to them, and there was a huge ruckus in the State Department briefing room today. It was pretty amazing. Many reporters just kind of lost their temper. And Liam Cosgrove, who's another Grayzone journalist, actually swore at Matthew Miller. But lost my train of thought, sorry. Pissed off. Where was I going with that? What was I?
Israel's our greatest ally.
Right. So Miller was presented with an extensive sort of litany of Israel's crimes, etc., and then says, why are we not even talking about conditioning aid to Israel? And Miller listened to this. He took it in, listened to just, the mass deaths, 10,000, 20,000 children, civilian, and he just says, Israel is our staunchest ally, and we will continue to support her. Period.
Well, if you're talking about the interaction with Liam, I think he said, if you want to make
There's another one.
Other one? Yeah.
It was a different reporter who said that.
Okay.
But Liam, I don't even know what Liam was responding to. I just saw Liam's. Also, he also listed a litany of atrocities committed by Israel.
Mm-hmm.
But he just sort of used it to, as Miller said, give a speech, but it was a great speech, and everyone should go check that out. Liam Cosgrove, it's a 2-minute thing he does in this. I've never seen, and I doubt he'll ever be in that room again. That's the one thing I'm worried about. I can't imagine they'll let him come back in because he did say shit or bullshit to the guy. We're sick of this shit or something like that. Anyway, it's our staunchest ally just arrested, blindfolded, beat, and detained an American journalist. I thought that's what Putin does. I thought that's what evil people do. And I'll guarantee you that, I won't guarantee it, but I would definitely bet money that Ethan or Evan, the guy who was arrested by Putin in Russia, the Wall Street Journal report who was just released, I'll bet you anything he was actually trying to steal some state secrets or get state information. He was at a defense plant in central, like I think it was the biggest tank building plant in all of Russia, and he was at the front gates of this plant talking to people. That's why he was arrested. You know, I doubt Jeremy Loffredo was trying to do that. Anyway, it's clearly, well, I would say that, I mean, I just hope that, and I do think this will happen, more people because of this will see Israel for what it is. And I guess I want to say one last thing about Israel and how I characterize it, what I think of it as an entity. I want to maintain this, even though it's often hard to, and I think it's important for everyone to maintain this belief or assumption that it's not evil people killing children by the thousands. And I wouldn't even say it's an evil ideology, but it's the ideology of Zionism that requires this. And that's why Benjamin Netanyahu is actually an excellent Zionist. He is possibly the greatest Zionist of all, because he clearly understands what Zionism is. It is clearing that land of the indigenous people and replacing them with Jews perpetually, period. That's Zionism. And we know that's Zionism. It's clear. And the early Zionists and even some of the later Zionists all said, because of that, the Arabs will rebel. And because of that, we will be in eternal war with the Arabs. And that's precisely what we've had. And I've been saying this for 25 years. I said it in the Daily Beast. It's an eternal warfare state. Why would you want to be involved with it? So Zionism requires killing children the way that Israel has done, not just this year, but not just since 1948, since the 1930s. Zionists or Israel have been killing children and civilians and lots of men and even fighters, but lots and lots of civilians. I think it's more than 250,000 now. Something like that. It was 200,000 before the Gaza war. So it's about 250,000 Palestinians they have killed for this purpose, because the Palestinians never stopped resisting, and therefore the Zionists and the Israelis have had to continually kill them. It's just math, really. So take evil out of it, take morality out of it. I mean, it's fine if you think something is evil, but it's sort of a meaningless concept. But if you don't like killing lots of children in your name, if you don't like a client state of your government causing war that you are involved in, destabilizing the world, yeah, I mean, rethink this. So anyway, and then the other thing, okay, last thing about Israel, it's just other people need to be aware that the regional war is here. And in a sense, the world war is here. So get a load of this. This is in the last month. Actually, this might have even been the last 2 weeks. It is right now. Israel has bombed Gaza, the West Bank, South Lebanon, Beirut, Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and Iran, killing thousands of people. This, by the way, is exactly what they've been trying to do. Netanyahu's whole strategy has been to provoke Iran and its allies, they call them proxies, allies, into a full-scale regional war. Now, the problem is, everybody, that Russia, more than ever right now, by the way, and China, more than ever right now, by the way, are also allied with Iran. And by extension, Hezbollah. Russia's only major military base outside of Russia in the world is where? Tartus, which you can row a canoe from there to Haifa. It's on the shore of Syria. Yes, it's in Syria. You can paddle your boat. It's that close to Israel. China. She and the entire Chinese CCP leadership has been speaking with incredible vitriol against Israel and Zionism. They are flat out official anti-Zionists. Putin doesn't talk like that. Putin has been sort of scornful in sort of a paternalistic way toward Israel, but China is anti. And they have also been moving closer and closer to Iran and have major deals with Iran, exchanging money for energy and all sorts of stuff. Weaponry, we know, as I said this before, we now see Russian military and I think Chinese technology, military technology in Iranian weapons that have been seized. Yeah, so, okay. I mean, no, Russia is not directly shooting at Americans right now. But, you know, 3 of our allies and 7 of their allies are at war. So why are we, this is a world war. Welcome to the end. And gosh darn it, man, that they're doing it in the name of Jews really makes me very sad. Because Jews don't kill children. Jews who feel the need to defend an apartheid ethno-state kill children. But Jews don't kill children. All right.
Yeah, with
what do you want to talk about now?
Well, we can pivot from there. You got the Bob Woodward story. Maybe there's some trouble in paradise between Joe Biden.
This is our fiction segment.
You don't think it? You think this is all bullshit? This is just
the review of this week's novels.
Uh-huh.
Are you not familiar with Bob Woodward's oeuvre?
Well, I mean, I know he's like the king of psyops for the last 50 years.
Yeah, I mean Watergate, and I think even Watergate, his work has been called into question on certain things, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Especially recently, especially now on the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, but I mean, definitely everything he's done since Watergate. Every time he comes out with one of these books, I look at it, I read a few pages, and it's just obviously all made up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole genre of, it's like a Washington D.C. book. It's like the insider thing where it's like some big famous journalist like Woodward. There's a few of them that do this. You know, they go and they schedule these very fancy formal interviews with everybody who works in the White House. And then allegedly from that, they put together a narrative, a story, what really happened inside the White House during that administration or whatever. But these things are almost always shown to be made up. I mean, I can think of many, many anecdotes from some of these books that never materialized into anything true. I mean, or were debunked in multiple ways. You know, they sell 1 million copies and he gets rich from it, and he's Bob Woodward, so he can do it. No, what were you, what part of it was interesting to you?
Reportedly, that Biden had made comments being frustrated with Netanyahu in the spring of 2024. That son of a bitch, he's a bad fucking guy. That he's irritated with Benjamin Netanyahu. There was that, and then there's the line that he blames Barack Obama for not going hard enough. Biden allegedly blames Barack Obama for not going hard enough on Putin in 2014 for the Ukraine war.
Well, we know the thing about Biden cursing at Netanyahu.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was reported multiple times early on in the war. But again, I think it was, and I bet you Woodward is a part of that, it was an attempt to show that Joe Biden has a heart. And it was also an attempt, and this is what liberals do with the Gaza war and with Israel generally, because liberals hate it, by the way. I've been following Pod Save America lately just to see what they say about it. And they really don't like it at all and are very angry. Notice my words here.
Mm-hmm.
They're not anti-Israel, though. You know, they're still pro-Israel. So what they do is they blame Netanyahu for everything. So the whole mantra among liberals is it's Netanyahu's fault. He's a terrible guy. What an asshole. They use curse words like this to maintain their ideological integrity, right? Because they have to be basically Zionists, because American liberals always have been. And because they're the ones who created the American empire and are the ones charged with maintaining it. And they know that Israel is the advanced military base in the Middle East for the US. So they can't be anti-Israel, but they sure don't like killing 20,000 children for it. So they got to blame a bad guy, and they make it Netanyahu. And as I said earlier, to me, Netanyahu is almost a perfect Zionist. I don't see, as a Zionist, and by the way, a lot of Zionists say this, right? As a Zionist, I can't think of a better prime minister. I mean, the Zionism is clearing that land of the Palestinians. That's what it requires. And we've always known this. They've always said it. So anyway, they're blaming Pod Save America, Joe Biden, liberals in general, Kamala. This is her mantra too. I just saw her say this. It's Netanyahu's fault. Once we get rid of him, everything's fine again. And it's not the fault of Zionism. See, that's the thing. They can't go there. They can't do a systemic critique, because then it's over. Once you open up the question of the very idea of a Jewish colony in the Middle East, you can't win that argument, because just almost on its face, it makes no sense and falls apart. Oh, because it's in the Bible. That's what. Oh, not because it's in the Bible, because of what happened in the 20th century. Okay. They're indigenous. Okay, they weren't there for 2,000 years, but they're still indigenous. Anyway, it immediately falls apart. So anyway, that's, I think, what Woodward was up to in that book. It was part of this attempt to blame Netanyahu for the sins of Zionism. I forgot. Sorry, I didn't look at the points we're going to do. Were we going to talk about Trump's amazing moment about nuclear weapons?
Are you talking about flagrants, or are you talking about?
He had that. It was during the interview with Andrew Schultz.
Yes, flagrant. Yeah, it just came out today. Yeah.
It's like a 45-second clip, but it's one of the most exciting things I have ever heard a president say.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say, just what he says here is almost enough for me to vote for him.
Okay.
Do we have that?
I don't have that specific clip right at this moment. I did want to talk about Trump going on flagrant, just in the broader context of the candidates having to go on podcast. Yeah. Schultz, his podcast is called Flagrant. Yeah. With the Kosh and all the boys. The thing about that clip, though, is he is criticizing Joe Biden at first for not encouraging Israel to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. And he's saying we need to kneecap Iran's ability to create a nuclear weapon, because the part that you like is coming up next. Nuclear war is the worst threat we have, period. Worse than climate change. People talk about climate change. Nobody talks about nuclear war. Mm-hmm. And he's given this answer a few times before in the campaign so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he okay, so let's be clear about Trump and foreign policy. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been sort of taken to task publicly. I did a big interview with Reason Magazine a couple of years ago about this. Michael Tracey yells at me every time he sees me about this. So, okay, I'll say it again. Trump had a, I would say fairly belligerent presidency. Although compared to other presidents, he's probably in the bottom 5 in terms of aggression initiated. But yeah, killing of Soleimani, sending some missiles into Syria, although that was a pinprick of a military strike compared to what the U.S. has done in the Middle East. The drone campaign is the worst thing I think that Trump has done. And I don't know the numbers, but I think it's in the thousands. And, how many civilians and how many kids were killed by those drones, a lot. And then there's also the untold story, what happened in Mosul and Raqqa, those 2 cities that were held by ISIS and that were reconquered by forces directed by the US. And that was begun by Obama and was finished by Trump. Now, the destruction of ISIS and the liberation of those cities from ISIS, awesome things, but I'll bet you a few eggs were broken in making that omelet. And the fact that no one, the media, no government has talked about it, there's no documentaries about it, there's no books about it. I've never seen any interviews about what happened in those cities, but those cities were 1 million population each, with thousands of ISIS fighters embedded in them and massive civilian populations all around them. And of course, we know how the ISIS fighters used to fight until they were dead, kind of like the Japanese in World War II. So I'm sure the fighting all around those cities was absolutely horrific, and I'm sure a lot of civilians were killed, and that was Trump's and Obama's campaign. Now, I'm open to having an argument about whether it was necessary, because that's one case in which, yeah, sure, I can see a case for that, because it was ISIS after all. Although, of course, the United States foreign policy is what created ISIS in the first place. Anyway, Trump did some bad stuff and was quite belligerent. And then, but most importantly, his belligerence was focused primarily against Iran. And what I would like for somebody to do, some journalist like Bob Woodward, who's actually intelligent and curious and has a spine and doesn't work for the establishment, to do is go and look at Donald Trump's history, his biography on this issue. I want to know, and I don't know, and I've never seen this. When did Donald Trump decide that Iran was the Satan of the world? When did he become so angry at Iran? I don't know. Is it about 1983 and the bombing of the barracks in Beirut, which was Hezbollah and probably Iran? Was it the 1979 and the revolution and the taking of the hostages in the U.S. embassy in Tehran? Was it that got him pissed off? Was it this, the allies of Iran in the Middle East who have at times gotten into skirmishes with U.S. soldiers and killed a few? Hardly. I mean, compared to what the U.S. has done in the reverse, maybe 10 or 20, I suppose, over the last 20 years. I guess you could link somehow to Iran. Well, the Iraq War, I mean, there's a lot of that. And I think a lot of the generals who were in Trump's administration, like Mad Dog Mattis, they all had lethal intentions with Iran. And the word was that was because they lost a lot of their guys in the Iraq War to Shiite militias in Baghdad, especially, who were armed by Iran, at least indirectly. They, whatever the reason, they blame Iran. A lot of the IEDs came from Iran. Shia militias, in the second phase of the Iraq War, really did most of the fighting against the U.S. And I think made up most of the casualties on the U.S. side, or many of them. Like Sadr City is this humongous Shia ghetto in Baghdad, and there was some of the nastiest fighting was in there. And they were, in various ways aligned with a client of Iran. I don't know. Trump, why does he hate Iran so much? Why does he need regime change? And why does he need to bomb Iran so badly? Is it because he's in love with Israel? I'm not convinced, by the way. He had this incredible interview that he does love Israel, that he's a real Zionist. Yes, I know. He did all these really provocative, seemingly ultra-Zionist things when he was president, moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Launching the Abraham Accords was like one of the worst things to do for the Palestinians. But I would say, well, go ahead.
I think this election cycle, you got Ben Shapiro full-throating endorsing Trump. They met for the anniversary of October 7th and at the grave of the founder of Chabad. And you've got Miriam Adelson giving $100 million and following Trump everywhere he goes. And so I think this election cycle, things are a lot closer between Trump and this particular interest group than they were in 2015. I think if you look at his public statements in 2015, he would, what was it, the Republican Jewish Congress, or he made a statement that I don't accept hundreds of millions of dollars in donations like Marco Rubio. You guys can't control me and you guys won't support me, even though I'll be your best friend. He says that, but he says, I can't be controlled by your money, which is why you guys don't support me. So I think he's very explicitly aligned with Israeli interests this cycle in a way he wasn't.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. But I don't think he's a Zionist. In other words, I don't think it's in his heart.
Oh, I don't think he's an ideologue too much on anything. And Zionism being one of them. I think he just has a soft spot for the Jewish people in his heart. I don't think. Yeah.
I think he has a soft spot for a handful of rich Jewish people.
Uh-huh.
Named
And
Adelson.
Yeah. And like he says this a lot, he came up as a real estate developer in Manhattan. Chances are you're working with a lot of Jews in that business and you develop good relationships with them.
Yeah, sure. Again, though, the strong pro-Israel ideological positions he took as president, I think mostly came from Jared Kushner and David Friedman, his grotesque ambassador to Israel, who's just, I mean, he's like a murderous clown. He's like he's like a murder clown.
I do have the Schultz clip if you want to look at it real quick.
Awesome. Here's the moment, everybody. This is the greatest moment by an American president ever. See, world peace is this hard. We can't even play the clip.
Was now more important than him, I guess, although he's still president of this country. And we're talking about nuclear war, and he's not capable. He doesn't even know what it is. He said yesterday when they talked about should they hit Iran's nuclear, no, you shouldn't do that. He said, no, it's sort of just the opposite, because the nuclear is the biggest threat we have in the world today. It's not global warming where the oceans are rising 1/8 of an inch in the next 500 years.
Right.
The threat that we have, the biggest threat, is nuclear war.
Yeah. You seem concerned about that.
I am, because it only takes one. I am.
Very true.
There are 5 countries now that have capability, and soon they'll have more. And we shouldn't let there be more. And I was at a point very good, despite the Russia hoax. It was a total hoax, and we were totally exonerated and everything else. I could have told them that the first day, but that causes, a lot of problems. A lot of problems, and they're a big nuclear power. We were close to a deal for getting rid of nuclear weapons. It would be so good.
For all countries or just Russia?
We were talking about Russia, ourselves, and China.
Oh, wow.
And we would then bring everyone else into it. And
so you all would get rid of your nuclear capabilities?
Denuclearize, yes. We were going to get rid
totally
of
denuclearize.
nuclear because it's too powerful. It's too much.
That's it. I mean, I've been waiting not just for a president, but for really any major U.S. politician to say anything like that my whole lifetime. It's remarkable. Now, it could be complete bullshit. It's possible that Trump he's making this up, but that he thinks this way, that he sees that, and this is the most important thing, and this is what I think is just revelatory and maybe revolutionary. He sees that as a good thing. Universal denuclearization. Everybody gets rid of their nukes simultaneously, including us. No US president has ever said anything like that as a good thing, as a goal. And this is what I have thought and felt and said about Trump since I became aware of him as a political entity in 2015. He is the first American president who actually has a taste for peace. Does that, he actually really kind of wants it the way that I want it, the way that peaceniks want it. Now, does he do things to attain peace? No. Has he been extremely belligerent in certain areas? Absolutely. We can go on, and I just laid out his fairly aggressive foreign policy, but I don't think that means he doesn't want peace. I think he's just confused about how to get there. But don't you think he has said many things like this that just sound like a guy who really doesn't like war and would really rather the United States not enter war? No president has ever sounded like that, because every president we've had has been a megalomaniac, essentially, that thinks that they should manage the world. I mean, every one of them. So in that, they know that it requires war to do so. Trump's not about managing the world. He's not about the empire. He doesn't want an empire. That's the other thing. He doesn't have a taste for empire. for the empire. In fact, I think he'd rather scale it down. Sure, I'm sure he would want military bases here, there, and everywhere when the Pentagon sits him down, but I don't think he really wants to be running the world the way the United States has done since 1945. And this is why he has said things about NATO all along that are very scary to the establishment, very scary to NATO, very scary to American imperialists. He's not into it. He kind of feels stuck with it, I think. And this is why it kind of goes back and forth between hiring neocons like John Bolton and then speaking at the Libertarian Convention. I mean, he swings way, and then, talking, hiring Mattis, I forget his first name, John, Mad Dog Mattis as his, what was he, NSC or something? NSA, something, major foreign policy guy, right? Kill Iran, and then says stuff about how, NATO's not so necessary anymore. What? I mean, if you call into question NATO, you call into question the entire project, because there's no American empire without NATO. So it's an amazing, spectacular moment but with Trump, of course, this could be absolutely a flash in the pan, and we'll never hear from him again on this. He will possibly forget it instantly.
Well, he's been consistent on this. He's been consistent on this. I think he's brought up nuclear a lot, and he does it in a very funny way. The line he used to call it the N-word that nobody's allowed to talk about. Mm-hmm. Nuclear, and
his climate change thing, right? He also compared it to climate change recently.
Yes,
which was amazing. Mm-hmm. It's exactly what I've been saying. Like, all these people are talking about climate change being the gravest threat to civilization. No, it's, what do you say? Nuclear winter, is the greatest threat to civilization. Yeah, no, the guy's got, at least a part of his heart is a peacenik. Mm-hmm. And again, I've just never seen that psychological quality in a president. They just haven't had it, because I believe you have to be a megalomaniac to be president. You have to believe that you should run the world.
Mm-hmm. Tucker Carlson has talked about this, and I think it's visible when he visited the graves at Arlington for the 3rd anniversary of the Afghanistan withdrawal. But I think he's the first president who has visited the graves of veterans with the attitude that this was a regrettable thing that happened. Like, not simply this was a necessary sacrifice that you made for your country, but this was a shame that your leadership failed you, and you should not be put in harm's way like this.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, he said so many things that are, have been coded as disrespectful to the military. Well, like making fun of John McCain for getting shot down.
Yeah.
That was not just being disrespectful to John McCain. That was being disrespectful to the whole Vietnam War effort. I mean, because lots of people were shot down. Lots of U.S. airmen were shot down in Vietnam. And to treat those soldiers and that war as anything less than sacred, again, calls into question the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So Vietnam has to have been an honorable mistake. You can't talk about it as anything other than an honorable mistake. They meant well, but they just went about it the wrong way. That's the liberal line. That's the establishment line. So yeah, no, he's so by calling into question, by making fun of John McCain, who was in the Hanoi Hilton for however long it was. My gosh, it's just, I love that.
Surviving on rat poop.
Yeah. The irreverence toward the American empire. Mm-hmm. Right, and all of its manifestations.
Well, it takes the winds out of the sails too, because that generation of politicians, you got John McCain, you got John Kerry, and then later, even like Joe Biden invoking the name of Beau Biden dying in Iraq, like, to say that they have a vested interest in how these wars go, and that because they suffered these things, that gives them carte blanche to start new wars against new targets, and to disrespectfully take all that honor out of the sails is the most like transgressive anti-imperial thing any major candidate has ever done.
Oh yeah. I mean, the empire requires a mythology to maintain itself. I mean, the people have to, so that the people so that the belief in the empire among the population is reflexive, so that the people don't have to and never do think about it. Mm-hmm. It's always there. In fact, Daniel Immerwahr wrote a book called How to Hide an Empire, which is sort of about this, about how the empire has been built over the last 100 years, ending up with now we have 500 military bases and NATO and all these alliances, et cetera. And ask the average American, they will know nothing about it. Not a thing, nothing. The average American doesn't even know about NATO, much less, Article 5 or any, they have no clue about any of this stuff. They don't even know, most Americans don't even know about other countries existing. It's that bad. Something like half of Americans truly can't find any other country on a map of the world. Like not any other country. So it's, so the mythology has to be built up so that it's like the air we breathe, so that we assume, without ever thinking about it, that of course the United States is everywhere. And if we get attacked, that means we were just minding our own business and some bad guys attacked us. When it's always, some forward operating base halfway across the world and where we're trying to subdue some insurgency, that's attacking us. They never. Yeah. So the mythology, when someone like Trump makes fun of key components of it, like the valor of our soldiers, like the necessity, the holy necessity of the NATO alliance, I think it weakens all of the connective tissues in the empire. And this is why, and I've said this since 2015, I believe, and some people believe, that Trump's questioning of the American empire is the reason for Russiagate. It's the reason for the stoking of Trump derangement syndrome. It's the reason for the entire anti-Trump campaign of the last now 9 years. Gosh, it's now 9 years. It was summer of 2015 when they launched it. And it's 9 years. I believe it's because of foreign policy. I believe it's because of the US empire. I think the CIA, with the FBI and the intelligence agencies and the security establishment, they're the ones who really launched, stoked, fed the anti-Trump propaganda. And they're the ones we know who were responsible for Russiagate. So, which was the main component of the anti-Trump campaign. It's because he called into question the most fundamental thing about the United States of America, which is that it is and always has been a global empire with aspirations to govern everyone. Since the founding fathers, every American political leader has expressed that ambition for the United States to rule the world in one way or another. Trump is the first to not be interested in that. The system, so for that, that's an existential threat to the American political system. Because in my view, as I've said, the American political system has always been an American imperial political system, a global system. Every domestic political issue in the United States can be traced to the globe, global politics. Name me an issue and I can show you how it's connected. It is remarkable what it means to live inside of a global superpower like this. But again, so Trump, that's why Trump, I believe, has been an existential threat or perceived to be an existential threat by the establishment. Not because he says mean things about Mexicans, not because he has orange spray tan and says pussy, talks about pussy. None of that. That's why the housewives are after him, hate him for sure. But the housewives are just taking direction, I think. Or they're following cues laid out by the security state.
On the nuclear,
acting through Rachel Maddow, by the way, and this is a real thing. Rachel Maddow wrote a whole book 10 years ago about the history of the U.S. foreign policy, sort of trying to be anti-war, but not really. So Rachel Maddow, of course, in doing that, she's a big, huge, famous person. So she interviewed all these people in the security state, in the Pentagon, NSA, CIA. She knows those people. And so I'm quite sure that they were directing those housewives, the Democratic Party housewives who watch MSNBC every day, I'm quite sure Maddow was getting directions, and I mean this. Operation Mockingbird, look at it. It's the whole history of this. The CIA doing this. She was getting directions from the intelligence agencies about what to say to her audience about Russiagate. Positive.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
yeah. I would love to see a reunion of the CNN show where Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow both got their start on cable news. I would love to see them face off again after.
Yeah, Tucker. I don't know about him,
but
yeah.
On the nuclear question,
yes.
The denuclearization is something that like used to be standard liberal consensus that was a goal to be worked towards. It was something that like Jimmy Carter was working towards. It was something that Reagan was kind of working towards. It was something that was just deemed as that actually is the end goal of where foreign policy should go. And I think this reveals Trump's sentiments to be standard 90s liberal. And
no. Well, wait, someone can fact check this, and I could be wrong about this, but I am pretty sure. So Jimmy Carter certainly was the most peacenicky, I suppose, of all the presidents, at least all the modern presidents.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Carter was not a peacenik, though. I mean, read the Grand Chessboard by Brzezinski, which we have a course on at Unregistered Academy. But in that, Brzezinski says that Carter basically forced the Soviets to invade Afghanistan, and did a lot of stuff. But in Latin America, Central America in particular, he was funding fascist rebels who were death squads, etc. But on the nuclear question, I don't think that Jimmy Carter ever expressed a vision, I could be wrong, about denuclearizing everybody.
No, not this far. No.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's crucial. If there's one nuclear bomb, there's too many, right? I mean, one U.S. nuclear submarine, and I've said this before, I mean, the Trident missiles that they have, each one can take out, one sub can take out all of Asia, can kill every person in Asia, one U.S. submarine. So, it has to be all. And it has to be complete.
And if this goal of complete denuclearization were to actually be accomplished, it gets rid of the justification for an adversarial relationship with Iran, with North Korea, with all these states that we constantly are told they're 5 minutes away from a nuclear weapon. These people aren't. If there's global denuclearization, one of the imperial false flags or justifications is completely off the table now. And it's like a private sector approach of like trying to actually solve the problem as opposed to allow a system to constantly feed off the problem.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we're just speculating, but I'm now thinking about how this would play out. Not that I think it will play out anytime soon, but I do think that the newly nuclearized nations in the global south, like Pakistan, India, soon Iran, probably, Israel, if it's still around, are not going to give them up because the superpowers will have massive advantages in conventional weaponry, and the third world they need a leveler, an equalizer. So having a nuke in their back pocket will do that. I think it's going to be I'm very sad to say. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be nearly impossible to accomplish this. But but it's a great vision. It's a great vision, and I'm glad one president in my lifetime has expressed it.
I do want to play the flagrant interview is in a broader context of more media appearances by both candidates. Kamala Harris went on 60 Minutes and had a pretty adversarial interview. 60 Minutes is so scripted and so heavily edited that it surprises me that they had this interview out that makes her look so bad. But this is what she had to say about foreign policy when she was pressed on it.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? this attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
So if you have proof that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, would you take military action?
I'm not going to talk about hypotheticals at this moment.
What about China?
China, first of all, we must win the competition for the 21st century with China. We must be able to compete and win. We should not seek conflict. But we have to understand that there are parameters in which we must operate that include ensuring, for example, that we protect American business interests.
So say if China attacks Taiwan, would we use military force to support Taiwan?
Bill, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals, but listen, we need to make sure that we maintain a one China policy, but that includes supporting Taiwan's ability to defend itself, including what we need to do to ensure the freedom of the Taiwan Strait. We need to make sure we have open lines of communication with China, in particular, military to military.
That's actually an improvement.
Yeah.
On the status quo. That's moving in the right direction.
Her answers?
Or that's turning her answers are turning the ship in the right direction, in my view. Right? Because it's what she's doing there is, and the Democrats in doing this are reverting to they're trying to revert to US-China policy of pre-Trump, right? Which is this is an amazing move. She's talking about competition instead of conflict. That's the sort of liberal democratic accommodationist view of China that prevailed before the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war, when China moved in on the side of Russia, that's when liberals and everybody turned against China. But this, to me, looks the Democrats are signaling a move back to a much less belligerent policy toward China. And that's some of the best news you can get. Am I reading it wrong, do you think?
It sounded like she said we have to support a one China. This is what got me. We have to support a one China policy, but we also have to support Taiwan's ability to defend itself. So that sounds like we are going to keep the establishment position in public, but we are going to keep sending weapons to Taiwan and keep militarizing the sea. That's what it sounds like to me.
The rhetoric is a complete shift, though. The rhetoric is a complete shift. Biden, again, remember after Ukraine,
it's not
February 20th, they were all of a sudden, all the Democrats were hawkish against China, all of a sudden, and have been for the last 2 years. But now they weren't talking about competition and against conflict.
Yeah, fair.
Why am I getting an echo again? Why does this happen in the middle of the show, even when I have AirPods? I don't understand. Let me try this. Is this still happening? Can people hear the echo, or is it just me who can hear it? Chat, can you hear my echo?
Is it your voice echoing or mine?
It sounds like mine. I don't understand. Why does it happen an hour into the show every time? It's incredible. Kills me. Let me try to mess with something here. Hello. Aha. Nope. Hello. I apologize, everybody. Oh, I know what it is. I think I've been on the wrong mic all night. Have I been on? 1 second here. Sorry, everyone. Why is it not? I'm having issues. I gotta fix these things. It's not picking up the right mic. Oh. Let's see here. My audio has probably not been as good as it should be, and I didn't even realize. Boy. Let me even come right back.
Okay.
Play a song or something. Sing a song. I'll be right back.
All right. So on that, yeah, audience is saying no echo. Dad's going to be back as soon as he can. I wanted to bring up those interviews in the broader context of podcasting world. Kamala went on All the Smoke with Steven Jackson last week, and now she went on Call Her Daddy. But she also went on The View, and she went on 60 Minutes, as well as Howard Stern. Improvise over giant steps real quick. So us in the alternative media space have been calling for Kamala to do alternative media, and she finally does through very corporate approved alternative media, like alternative light, I guess you could call it. Hello.
No luck. Someone says yes, echo. 2 people say no. Oh, God. Someone says to me, I don't understand why it starts. Okay. I don't know if I can continue with this in my ear though.
Does it keep going if you keep talking? Like or is it just
something
at first?
I have a systemic issue here. There's something, for some reason my interface is not being read. Gosh. I am not a patient person in general. And when stuff like this happens, I am not a professional about it in terms of my demeanor. Okay, let me try one last thing here. Oh, can't do that because, oh my God, this is really amazing. I give up.
You sound fine over here.
I do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not bothered. I
can hear myself though.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. Okay, I'll try. I guess you can hear me? People are okay generally? You can hear me?
I'll mute my mic while you're talking. That'll help, I think.
Hey, now it's no longer echoing. It decided to stop. That's the thing. Okay, so let's talk about technology for a moment. Is technology not based on the binary, the 0-1 thing? It either works or it doesn't. It's either a 0 or a 1. I've never understood why digital technology can just fade in and out and decide to work sometimes and not. And all right, I'm done. Where were we? Let's talk about the hurricane. I got personal news about, well, sort of, not really. I mean, sure. I believe Hurricane Milton just made landfall in Sarasota. I'm pretty sure it was scheduled for 7 Eastern. It's now 8 Eastern. The winds forecast for Sarasota, I think, are 150 miles an hour. It's category 4, but it is a massive, deadly, damaging hurricane. There will be probably double digits dead, maybe triple digits. That's what the last five big hurricanes in Florida have killed, about 100 to 200 people, and then just thousands of houses are destroyed. Florida, this is pretty chilling to the bone. Florida and sort of the South in general, the attitude toward prisons and prisoners is not so benevolent. Florida, I think it's the 3rd largest prison population in the country, humongous prison population, giant prisons. I found out 2 things about Florida prisons this week. One is that 3/4 of them are not air conditioned. In Florida, in a prison, imagine living without air conditioning. That's torture. That's straight up torture. Number 2, and this is maybe even more shocking, the last time there was a major hurricane in Florida, a lot of the prisoners, most of the prisoners, were left in the prisons. They just locked the doors and walked away. And prisoners were nearly drowned because the storm surge was so high. So my friend Jason is in Coleman Federal Correctional Institution it's near Ocala. And fortunately, it's not in the main path, but it's right next to it. So the winds there will be about 80 to 90 miles an hour. So I think his prison will survive and he will survive this, but it's going to be an incredible night in that prison starting really soon. But Manatee County Jail, which I believe holds 4,000 men, announced today that they will not evacuate any one of them. Manatee is directly in the path of the storm. The eye of the storm will pass over Manatee County Jail with thousands of prisoners locked inside. I believe there are other prisons in Florida that are also not evacuated. Some have been evacuated, to be fair. Yes, some have been evacuated, but many have not. And Manatee is a big one that is directly in the path of that storm that is happening right now. I just, yeah. So there's that. The politics of, there's a politics to hurricanes, everyone, believe it or not. Oh, I am hoping that the estimations, the sort of hype about this hurricane are driven by climate change ideology, because I have noticed that the meteorologists who have been most hysterical about it have said this is because of climate change. And people who believe in climate change tend to get quite upset because they think that the world's going to end in their lifetime. So I hope it's not that bad. But no, I mean, I just looked at it. I mean, as of 2 hours ago, that's the wind speeds were 150. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. And just that they leave people in prisons during this. And by the way, some of these are like low security prisons. It's not like we're talking about murderers and rapists, you know, it's talking, you know, people who white collar crime, or my friend Jason, who was shipping a box of ecstasy. Yeah, a box of ecstasy. He's doing 3 years in federal penitentiary for trying to mail a box of ecstasy, which is used in therapy, by the way, all around the world, and is widely considered, almost universally considered, to be a therapeutic, non-harmful drug. Yeah, so people like him get punished in medieval ways in this country. And I would like one day for this country to really sit down and talk about why we have barbaric prisons when our European friends do not. European prisons, most of them, certainly the Northern European prisons, are quite humane, as a matter of fact. And I don't see, people actually don't understand how terrible American prisons are inside because we don't talk about it. We have 2 million people in those prisons and we never talk about it. We never talk about what it's like in there. And as soon as you take a look, you realize that our prisons are the equivalent of third world prisons. The high security and medium security prisons, especially, I don't think are much different than the ones in Mexico or even in Africa. I mean, there is true barbaric levels of neglect and abuse in American prisons. And it's just shocking and stunning. Mother Jones, which is mostly a bullshit liberal rag that spouts Democratic Party propaganda, does do one extremely useful thing. I hope they still do this. Every year they come out with their list of America's 10 worst prisons with a description of each one. And it's tremendously useful, and I recommend everyone go find that. And one of the interesting things is, you know, what did the left have to say about prisons and liberals? All they have to say is private prisons are terrible. Private prisons are the problem. First of all, 6% of American prisoners are in private prisons. And then if you look at the Mother Jones list, every single year of the worst prisons in the United States of America, 9 out of 10 every time are government-owned, government-managed prisons. Of course they're the worst. What do you think Pelican Bay is? What do you think Angola State Prison is? What do you think Attica is, the famous dungeons in America? San Quentin. What was Alcatraz, the worst dungeon of all? All of them are owned and run by your government. Anyway, all right, what's next, dude? Let's finish. 14 minutes. I'm not echoing. It feels good. Did I lose you? Oh. Did you lose?
Hey, sorry. I muted my mic, thought that might help with the echo while I was doing it, and then I took myself off accidentally, but I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah. On the note of jails, Brandon Caserta, if you listen to our episode with Brandon Caserta, he talks about how bad jails are in this country and how that's specifically a tactic to get plea bargains out of people, and how that's sort of baked into the cake now that jails are so bad. These are not criminals. These are people awaiting trial in many cases.
Great episode. Great guy. Brandon Caserta was on Unregistered about 2 years ago. He did a year and a half in a county jail, which you're not supposed to do. Of course, you're supposed to be sent to moved to a prison eventually. But no, a year and a half in a county jail, sharing a bunk room, I believe, with 18 other guys, and he was the only white guy in the room. Yeah, and he said the prisoners, his fellow prisoners, were the only good part of it. They were actually treated him really well, and they got along great, and they became friends. But the conditions he described as absolutely medieval. Like, they really are. I mean, they really don't look much different than prisons did in the 19th century, or in America, or in medieval times in Europe. It's astounding that we don't talk about it, that even the left, again, doesn't even seem terribly interested in this. Why is the left not up in arms all the time about the conditions in our prisons? Especially considering about how many of us spend time in prisons. 2.3 million right now, Americans are incarcerated. It's something else. Why? It's a major part of American life. Why don't we talk about what it's like when we're in there? Yeah. But Brandon, yeah, that was an amazing story. He was, oh, by the way, so he was put in jail. He was prosecuted, eventually acquitted, but he was there for allegedly plotting to kidnap and assassinate Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. This was the plot that was hatched, conducted, egged on by the FBI with agents provocateur. And Brandon was just shooting guns with this militia group in Michigan. Definitely political, but he had no interest in kidnapping anybody. And he got swept up in this sting operation that was the prelude, the precursor to January 6th, by the way. Mm-hmm. The feds practiced what they were going to do at January 6th on Brandon in Michigan with the Whitmer kidnapping plot. So it's a very important story. It got some play when Brandon won his case, but it's sort of been ignored ever since then. And people still talk about J6 as if it was simply a bunch of rabid, right-wing Nazi rednecks who stormed the Capitol. Nah, they were overrun with FBI agents. We know this. We know this from Brandon's case. I think it was 3/4 of the plotters in the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot were actually FBI agents. I mean, 3/4. I mean, there you go. It's amazing how much, FBI, CIA, NSA are actually involved in domestic matters directly. It's really something. And one day I hope we find out how much they are involved in influencing, controlling the media, controlling law enforcement. It's something else. When Israel snapped its fingers and had all those kids at Columbia arrested in New York, which is precisely what happened, by the way. Look it up. You can see the IDF, or the Israel New York City liaison, is a Columbia professor, and she ordered it. She ordered the cops to move in and arrest them. So of course that's part of the national security establishment. They are, again, we're in the global empire. This is what it means also to be in the middle of a global empire. When you live in Switzerland, you don't have to worry too much about their intelligence services getting into your business. I'm not even sure they have an intelligence service in Switzerland because they don't need one, because they're just a little country with no ambitions on any other land. But yeah, I mean, we have to maintain order, especially around the consensus of the empire. So we can't allow certain things to be spoken.
We got 10 minutes left. We could talk about the hurricane being politicized in a number of ways. Potentially Biden undercutting Harris by shifting the narrative on collaborating with DeSantis. We could talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene asserting that they control the weather and that they can control the weather, and that we shouldn't completely erode the possibility that some secret government program might have been involved in destroying states to sway the outcome of the election. We have David Axelrod saying that, hey, it turns out that these are some red counties affected by the hurricane, and these people probably won't get out to vote before the election. So on the whole, I just want to say it's a shame that hurricane season went on top of election season this time around. But are there any parts of the hurricane being politicized you want to comment on from there?
I mean, it's Jewish scientists who did it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
they're the ones. What? The what?
In their tunnels.
There's a meme I saw today of the Hurricane Milton taking the shape of a Star of David, and MTG saying she was vindicated, or saying "I told you so," something like that. Did she say it was Jews?
No. She just actually very appropriately observed that they, and I believe she meant the government, can control the weather. I believe those are her words. And I've got the clips that she shared. You got John Brennan talking about all the different tools that were available to control the weather. And you've got a CBS story about the different tools that are available to control the weather. And these are all being pushed as exciting new technologies we can use to combat climate change or whatnot. So this is something that is on the record, that there are patents and there are technologies being pursued to control the weather.
For decades.
Yeah.
What? This is controversial? I mean, they've been bragging about it. All these plans that have been hatched to combat climate change by deploying, what was it, a zillion mirrors on the oceans to reflect heat back upward into the atmosphere to change the weather. I mean, that's just one. I've heard of many by major scientists and scientific institutions and governments undertaking massive research projects to do exactly that. Would the government ever do such a thing? Oh no, gosh, no. You know what? I just found out about Operation Sea Spray. You ever heard of Operation Sea Spray?
Oh, was this Vietnam or was this?
No one has, Michael. No one has. I hadn't heard of it until everyone should have. And it was right here too in San Francisco in the 1950s. Yeah, 1950s. Forget which year. The U.S. Army stationed a naval ship off the coast of San Francisco. It was rigged with massive hoses connected to tanks containing botulism spores and other diseases. And I'm not, look it up, Operation Sea Spray. I think there's even a Wikipedia page about it. And shot clouds of disease over the San Francisco Bay Area. Estimates are that every single person who lived in the San Francisco Bay Area inhaled those particles. Now, they were designed in such a way, what they were doing is they were testing the outcome of a biological war. They were testing how it would affect the population. They did the spores they put in this thing, I think, were not intended to be deadly, and so no one died. I think one guy died. I think one guy who lived in San Francisco died, but dozens of people got sick. Schools got shut down from it. There was a smell in the air for days because of it. And it was all secret. We didn't know about this until recently. It was declassified just in recent years. No one knew about this. I mean, this is one thing that the US government has done, not exactly controlling the weather, but pretty close and much worse. You know, not creating clouds for more rain, creating clouds that will kill you. It's an incredibly nefarious outfit, the US government, and always has been, and should never, ever be trusted.
So you're on the, I'm super slow. I'm trying to share that Wikipedia page on Operation Sea Spray. Cool. No video, but just, military tests starting on September 1950.
50, yep.
2 types of bacteria. Yeah, 50. Yep. 80. There's a lawsuit alleging negligence and Army reported outbreaks and potentially urinary tract infections.
Well, just that they did this without announcing it, in secret.
Yeah,
it's in 1950. In 1950, I mean, my parents lived here then. This is incredible that this happened, but it's not incredible if you know anything about the U.S. security state. That's just one of so many stories of what the U.S. has done to its own population, the CIA in particular. We could go on, MK Ultra. So many things that were absolutely nefarious that no one talked about at the time, and still no one takes into account that that's how the United States government has operated and behaved always. And so when we talk about U.S. foreign policy and the U.S. being a force for good, why should we ever trust it to do the right thing in international affairs when we know it's done this to its own people? Is astonishing to me. Never ever trust any government, but especially not this one. Cool. And especially not when it comes to national security affairs.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene, productive dissent, not spreading misinformation and crazy conspiracy theories on this one?
Hell no. Of course the Jews did it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. To make my reporting accurate, she said, obviously they control the weather. And for some reason, people like Sarah Silverman called her an anti-Semitic pig for that. For some reason, some Jews got a little defensive with the allegation that somebody controls the weather. I don't know why anybody would feel that way, but that's what happened.
Jews are very intelligent people. That is why they are greatly overrepresented in the sciences. Any other questions?
We never talked about the longshoremen strike. That got wrapped up. Do you have an attitude about that?
Speaking of criminal gangs.
Yeah. Okay. So you're on the
side.
Of,
it's funny. I started out, I mean, we talked about this last week, but, I started out as a communist labor guy. Labor historian was my first academic subfield. My first book was a book on labor history on the Teamsters Union, Jimmy Hoffa, but it's also about the AFL and the CIO and the merger of the two. And it's about really the history of the U.S. labor movement. So I spent years plowing those fields and being, very much, of course, in solidarity with the unions and labor movement in general. I am now completely against the whole thing, top to bottom. I don't think there should be laws against them, but people just need to understand what unions are. They are cartels. They are monopolies on a labor market that is enforced by violence. Violence being the threat that is implied toward any workers who would replace striking workers who would attempt to enforce, contract demands. That's how unions get anything, is by stopping working, and that only works if they can't be replaced, and that only works if they threaten to do violence against the replacement workers, the scabs. That's the whole history of the United States labor movement. Is labor used violence to get its way to establish these cartels, and then to get better conditions from the owners by going on strike or threatening strikes, and then major parts of the owner class, major corporations that were unionized, just accepted these unions so that they would no longer have to go through strikes periodically, made the unions a part of the management. This is true for automobile in particular. The UAW basically co-manages all the auto plants. But ultimately, that's because the unions have always this in their back pocket. They can stop by the picket lines. What the picket lines are all about. It's about stopping replacement workers from entering and replacing them with those jobs, for those jobs. And that is only backed up by violence. You have to physically stop someone from coming in the door, right, to take your job, ultimately, or at least imply that the threat is always there. And so I'm not a fan of monopolies, and I'm not a fan of violence, and I'm not a fan of violence being used to support a monopoly, no matter what it is. And Why exactly is the union worker more important and valuable to us than the replacement worker? Why is it important for us to save that monopoly job with artificially inflated wages because of the monopoly? Why do we need to keep that person in that job rather than give a new person another job? I mean, it's
or automation,
right, or automate them and get rid of them entirely. It's an amazing thing that the left basically constructed. It comes from the Marxist left, begins in the 19th century. The fetishization of the labor movement and of trade unions is all the way. Anybody who's a serious or even non-serious Marxist leftist, the woke don't get this. The woke don't understand unions. But the true like old school Marxist leftists, every single one of them worships unions and considers them to be basically sacred. You never cross a picket line. I was told that when I was 5 years old. I mean, that's just, it's a mantra on the left. It's like a sacred thing. You never cross a picket line. And I always thought, no matter what they're striking for, like what if they're striking to ban black workers? Do I not cross the picket line?
What if they're trying to shut down the economy and life-saving imports in the middle of the most damaging hurricane season we've had in decades? Yeah.
Exactly. Right, exactly. Does it matter what they're striking for, what the picket line is for? No, you just fetishize them and worship them. That's because of the Marxist idea, of course, that the working class is the true vehicle of the revolution, must lead the revolution must be about the working class, etc. We could talk about that, but that's where it comes from. It's completely a completely corrupt idea. It's nothing I want to be a part of. Again, I don't want laws against unions, but I have no interest in supporting them anymore. So there you go.
Cool. Ready to go to the after show?
Yeah, I can't wait.
Shout
Unregistered live. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to shout free Jeremy Loffredo one more time and say, basically, if you're a journalist of any profession and care about the endeavor of journalism, if you care about American citizens at all, this should be the number one story that we've got American citizen journalist kidnapped, being held hostage by a hostile foreign government.
Amen. If you're an American journalist, you got to say something, or you're just not a journalist. I don't consider you a journalist, and I have a few people in mind specifically right now, as I say that, who I know will not mention this.
Well, I think you might be surprised. I think it might be brought up at the State Department if this continues and he's not released.
Oh, it will for sure.
Yeah,
it for sure will. Yeah. All right, man. Unregistered Live is our hangout after Unreported every Wednesday night. That's where I'm going to go right now. It's a Zoom meeting. We hang out for an hour and a half. It's a lot of fun. It's a highlight of my week. And if you want to join us, it's $5 a month. Also, if you just want to support this show, which you should absolutely do. In fact, if you haven't, you should feel pretty bad about yourself. $5 a month. Help us keep going. Hang out with us after the show. It's a ton of fun. Go to patreon.com/unregistered. Become a patron, and we'll see you. Or not. But it's a good thing to do. And we believe in doing good things for us. All right, man. Free Jeremy.
Yeah. We need a system of some way where you pay us money and it makes you a better person, a way of selling indulgences to guarantee.
Has that ever been tried before?
Yeah.
I wonder if any group has ever tried to do that. How did it work out? Yeah. Well, they're still around. The church is still around. All right, man. Thank you, dude. This was great.
Sweet.
Thanks, everybody.
See you on the other side. Peace. And stream.